All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thank you, everyone. My Tuesday recorded audience, my favorite. Let me tell you something. It is a delight to be here. I don't understand why you'd be anywhere else. Am I right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was an applause line, and it was right on cue. David Cay Johnston joins us today, and he can maybe make a sense of a nonsensical world. The timeline on Iran shifts. You'll hear several high administration officials, and when I say high, I mean they must be stoned if they think we believe the utter BS coming out of this administration. Talk about the timeline on Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, the critical strait for the passage of oil to much of the world, even though, as Donald Trump emphasizes, it isn't very important to us. It's mostly China. We're doing China a favor by keeping it open. Anyway, he said that. We will talk to David about all these things. You'll hear from Pete Hegseth, Hamron Hegseth, and there'll be even some lighter moments. In fact, I think we got some emails that are kind of fun. Somebody sent an email yesterday. In fact, I don't have my... Was it Amy who sent the email yesterday? She was wearing the...
Amy B. Yeah.
Serious credibility glasses. These are my credibility glasses, the heavy hitters. Yeah. These are. I should have them on for the duration of the war. This is a... I think we got a... I don't know. Did I pass along some emails to you? Maybe I didn't.
You did. You sent me one message. You forwarded me one message from a woman who had lovely things to say, and then she talked about this cat that is needing a home.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
It was, I think, the animal shelter, cat shelter in on the peninsula of the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah,
Palo
look at that
Alto,
cute little cat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I've got a thing for cats. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, this is from Linda. Linda says, "Hi, Mark. I thought I'd cheer you up from the heavy news with this cutie. She is waiting with pets in need in Palo Alto for a forever home. So this is a cat that you can find at Pets in Need in Palo Alto. And apparently she has a little taco toy that she really loves. So very cute."
Well, I'm quite touched. And that little cat looks like my cat, Cash, our cat. Who is a sweet stray cat that we took in some years ago, and she's just the best. So thank you, Linda, for making us smile. And in these dark times, it's always nice to be reminded of some other stuff that doesn't have to do with the darkness. Very, very cool. So thank you. If you want to reach us for any reason, it's the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com, and we'll get to some other communications a little bit later.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, a lot of people send stories and send links to things, and that's also very helpful as well. So I try to read everything and respond when appropriate. Now, I want to get to also mention Rahul Powar is going to be here today, and he is the AI expert. He's a technologist, brilliant, one of the creators of Shazam. You know that program where you hit it and it can tell you what the song is? Are you familiar with that, Kim?
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever used Shazam, but I'm aware of that it exists.
Kim, how are you?
Tony, have you used Shazam before?
Oh my God, all the damn time.
Me too, man. I can't. Kim is truly like one of a kind. I can't. If I had $1 for every time I've used Shazam, I'd never have to work again.
Really?
Oh my God, I use it all the time. So you just know all the songs, or you just never feel the need to find out the name of a song?
No.
What is the, or you just weren't aware of it enough to use it?
I guess I just never. I've been. Do you use it when you can't remember the name of a song and you want to feed it some kind of lyric?
I just,
No,
it's like,
you just-
what? I just hear something. It's like, what's that?
Yeah, you just press the button
Oh.
and it hears the song and it'll tell you what it is.
Immediately
Oh.
identify it. Yeah.
It'll do it for classical music, jazz music, pop
Oh.
music. Yeah.
Okay.
You've never heard of it, really?
I mean, I knew
Gosh.
there were
I blame
programs
you.
Yeah, it's
out
my
there
fault.
that would-
I should have
that
made
would
you
help
aware
me
of it. I
identify
really am
music,
sorry. It's
but
my
I'm
fault.
okay. I've been okay without it. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. All right. Well, way to dump on our guest, Kim. Thank you.
I
He
need
created it.
Shazam
Most other
immediately.
people, most people, I've never heard of Shazam. Says Katie. Are you kidding? Who are you people? Who are you?
Thank you.
What am I dealing with? I've never heard of Shazam. You can Google vague lyrics and they'll get it, says Katie.
Yeah,
that's different.
That's what I do.
Shazam
totally
is like
different,
while
man.
you're hearing something, it's like, what's that? And it'll just
Yes,
tell you right
thank
away.
you. Kim,
Yeah, I don't-
Lyrics, like, well, you have to type lyrics. Good luck. Yeah, because
Oh
everyone gets
my
lyrics
God.
right?
Yeah, also, sometimes it's just an instrumental thing that there are no lyrics at all. Anyway, all right. Look, I don't know what to do with you people. I'm just going to do this show anyway.
The Mark Thompson Show.
God, I've never heard of Shazam. Anyway, he's one of the creators, and he'll be through. But mostly we'll talk about AI, where AI technology sits. We'll also talk about the Tomahawk missile strike, which may have had AI involvement. And, of course, the Pentagon and the controversy around AI and the emerging lawsuit on the part of Anthropic and the Pentagon. And if you haven't gotten up to speed on that, essentially the Pentagon leveraged Anthropic to break a bunch of their existing rules on AI and the use of AI in war without the involvement of a human being, just allowing AI to fire a weapon at targets. And it's very possible that that kind of error was involved in the Tomahawk missile strike. Again, there have been sort of vague reports that AI may have had something to do with that. Maybe not that precise thing. So the point is that this landscape of AI is expanding rapidly. It's scary, and we talk about that with, again, one of the leading AI experts in all the world. That'll happen a little bit later. Yeah, wait till these people find out about Facebook. Exactly. You guys just finding out about Shazam. Our Facebook page is up. I will confess, it's late in the process. I asked that we be the very last people to have a Facebook page. And I don't know if we're the very last, but we're close to the last. And so if you want to find it, you can find it on Facebook. You'll see videos, you'll see content, you can leave comments, and it's a great place to hang out. All the young kids are on Facebook now, and if you want to be cool, and when I say young kids, I'm talking about all of us in our 60s. Yeah. Anyway, you'll like it, do it, support, and I think you'll enjoy it. All right. Before I go any farther, any questions, comments? I'll ask you, Tony. I ask you, Kim. Are you ready to go? Did you get Rahul squared away yesterday, Tony? Good.
Yes.
Good morning, Remarkable, says Ms. Organic with a $10 super chat.
Big shout out.
I love that. Thank you. Super chats and super stickers are live, of course. We are a live show. We're daily. I do have a major announcement, but I'm not going to make it until hour 2. It is about the show, and it is major. I will now, though, get into some important reporting.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't need to tell you that the world community is affected by everything going on in the Middle East, and the Wall Street community and investment community is very much affected as well. There is pressure on the Trump administration, this is out of the Wall Street Journal reporting, to wrap this up. Wrap up your Middle East escapade soon. The markets are betting that the war will end soon, in small part perhaps because the war doesn't make any sense, and maybe in larger measure because Trump doesn't want to take the kind of heat he is taking from, again, the investment community. Meanwhile, the Iranians, and this is just an overview, and then I'll give you some sound from Trump, and I'll give you some sound from Hegseth, etc. The Iranians, it seems to me, are in no hurry to wrap things up. They're dealing with the existential threat that the Americans and Israelis pose, the end of their culture, society, is something that they are staring down the barrel of this gun and realizing. And that, I know, on some level may overstate it, but on another level, I think that's what they're seeing. And they've taken out all of the Iranian leadership, the new Iranian leader who is taking the place of his father. It's almost literary that this guy is far more intense, far more wedded to doctrine, far more a manifestation of true belief than his father was even. It's a bit like the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy's house falls on the witch. They're singing and dancing, ding dong, the witch is dead. And it's incredible. And everybody's jacked up and happy. And then this other witch shows up. And Glinda says to Dorothy, when Dorothy says, "Who's that?" Oh, that's the Wicked Witch of the West. She's even worse than her sister, is the line. And it so applies to the situation here. The drone missions that are unrelenting, that are flying into Israel and to surrounding Middle Eastern states, will sustain themselves for some time. Iran does not want a quick exit. They saw what happened after the 12-day romp that Trump and the Israelis took when they took out the nuclear facility. Remember when we obliterated it? Trump said it's all over, mission accomplished. And the Israelis made a deal. The Iranians made a deal with the Americans. And before you know it, they're back into this kind of conflict that they're in now. So on some level, they want this to continue. The other thing I will just mention, and then I will play these cuts, is something that I mentioned before, and now I'm seeing it in print on CNN. I mentioned to you yesterday that the goal of taking the enriched uranium from Iran is a laudable goal, I suppose. Clearly it's sort of the Raiders of the Lost Ark moment. You're there to get the Ark. You're there to hobble and eliminate the threat of a nuclear enrichment program that would threaten the world. That's the stated goal, yeah? But it's talked about by the Americans that we'll send in special forces, we'll extract this uranium, and we'll extract these nuclear, fissile materials, and in that way end their program. What I said yesterday was, you can't just send in a handful of guys. You can't even send in several handfuls of guys to do that. You have to know where it is, and I understand American intelligence is the very best intelligence. Is it? We just blew up a school, killed 175 kids. Don't tell me about how our intelligence is. It's not foolproof, and it may be hard to locate the exact stuff you need, but that's not even the problem. The problem is there will be significant defense around that area. And so I was making the point that you'll need all kinds of air support, ground support, additional support for an operation of that size and of that critical nature. And now here it is in CNN. Recovering Iran's remaining highly enriched uranium stockpile, believed to be sitting in a storage facility deep underground, an objective the Trump administration has been discussing, would require a significant number of U.S. ground troops beyond a small special operations footprint. The U.S. bombing campaign that struck 3 Iranian nuclear facilities last June did not destroy all of that country's highly enriched uranium stockpile, the material needed to create a nuclear weapon. Much of it is believed to be Iran's Isfahan nuclear site. This is the elimination of Iran's nuclear capability, one of the stated aims of the war. And so you will need to really get your cavalry together to make that happen. It'll be a far more complicated operation than some special forces unit that goes in and extracts these nuclear materials like you extracted the Venezuelan leader. Now, what's happening in the markets? The expansion of this war, the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, all of these things have turned the oil market on its side. How long could this event go on, and what are the ripple effects of all of this? Cut 15 from the oil expert Daniel Yerkin puts it all in some kind of perspective. The news not good. A quick exit would help, but it doesn't appear that we're looking at a quick exit. So here you go.
You say that we're not even in a nightmare scenario yet. What is a nightmare scenario from here?
A nightmare scenario would be that the Strait of Hormuz remains more or less closed, that there is really damage to these incredibly important facilities along the Gulf Coast, and that you have an extended outage. And at that point, you have not only prices going higher, this is part of the nightmare, you have financial markets hit. We saw some sense of that over the last few days. And of course, the world plummeting into an economic recession. That's the nightmare scenario that has people, and I think that's what the IMF is referring to, if this goes on for a long period of time.
And so the markets are jittery, and there is really no assurance on the part of anyone that this is going to wrap up in any kind of a timely way. As I mentioned to you, it seems to me that the Iranians have very much in their interest, and they've indicated this, that they have stated this, that we're not stopping anytime soon. And the American leadership has been outspoken about what they're going to do. And play me cut 3. And this relates very much to the Strait of Hormuz and the oil situation that Donald Trump very much realizes is critical to the world economy.
As we continue Operation Epic Fury, we're also focused on keeping energy and oil flowing to the world. And I will not allow a terrorist regime to hold the world hostage and attempt to stop the globe's oil supply. And if Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level. I will take out those targets that were easy and that I mentioned just before. We'll take them out so quickly, they'll never be able to recover, ever. If they want to play that game, they better not play that game. In the long run, oil supplies will be dramatically more secure without the threat of Iranian ships, drones, missiles, nuclear menace, or anything. So the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain safe. We have a lot of Navy ships there. We have the best equipment in the world, inspecting for mines. Again, most of their ships are down at the bottom of the sea, but we will hit them so hard that it will not be possible for them or anybody else helping them to ever recover that section of the world. The
reality is that the old school worldview that Donald Trump has of tremendous American firepower rendering others in the region pretty much irrelevant. It's not appropriate to the situation any longer. These drone strikes work, and these drone strikes on ships, drone strikes on refineries, all of these things disrupt enormously what's going on, and the entire region has been drawn into this, and so it is. And I'll play some more Trump for you in a second, but play for me cut 2, because they're Iranian drones that have now very much affected the oil supply, and it's not even in the Strait of Hormuz, it's in the UAE.
We're getting breaking news that's coming in from UAE. An Iranian drone has hit now an industrial facility in Abu Dhabi. Now, we understand that this drone wasn't intercepted. It hit the target at an industrial facility in Abu Dhabi. A fire has broken out as a result, but we can also confirm for you that no casualties have been reported in this particular incident. Firefighting operations are underway. Now, this is an industrial facility that's been hit, but very, very close to, in fact, that location is Abu Dhabi's largest refinery. So was that originally the target? At this point, we can confirm for you the refinery hasn't been hit. It's been in an industrial facility, and right now efforts are underway to put out the fire that's broken out as a result. Remember, UAE has been facing a barrage of missile and drone attacks. They've been thwarted, intercepted largely by the air defense systems, but there have been a few lone drones that have made it through and hit the target, this time in Abu Dhabi.
This is, again, a sign that many of these refineries, I mean, that's a huge refinery, maybe the biggest refinery in the region, has been hit. And now this from Reuters. Aramco warning of catastrophic consequences if this Iran war continues. The CEO, and they're the top oil exporter, the CEO just saying minutes ago, there'll be catastrophic consequences if the Iran war drags on. He describes the current disruption as, quote, the biggest crisis the region's oil and gas industry has faced. The effective shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, where normally about 20% of the world's oil passes through daily, poses a significant challenge, as noted here. There would be catastrophic consequences for the world's oil markets, and the longer the disruption goes on, this is a quote, the more drastic the consequences for the global economy. That, according to Amin Nasser. So it seems as though that arithmetic is very easy, and yet the messaging here is about two things. One is, I know we have to get to David. I have to get to Rahul. The messaging here is, and I can speak about some of this with David, and it'll be interesting to get his take on it. But the Americans are doing two things. They're messaging on the war, and they're messaging on how great things are going. And then Donald Trump is also handling, this is sort of a subset of that, Wall Street and investment and the economy. That's why he picked up the phone yesterday and he called CBS News saying, you know what, I feel like we've gotten what we needed out of this war. All of a sudden, you know, you started to see the markets lift. So to what extent will Donald Trump be motivated by that? However, I'll say one last thing. It's by no means clear to me that the Americans can extract themselves from this situation without paying a huge price. I don't think this is it's certainly not a Venezuela. It is more like Iraq, but messier. I mean, it's so ill-advised. This entire thing was like, it was cooked up. Again, Netanyahu's been beating this drum to take out Iran for so long, and I get it that Iran was weakened in all of these ways and that this might have been a moment, but this war just is, again, to call it half-baked is, you know. Give me one more thing on the timing of an American departure. Do it with cut 18 with Hegseth, perhaps, on this, Tony, and then I'll give you a little bit of the my conversation with Rahul. But this is Pete Hegseth talking about the timing and when the Americans will finish up the job.
And from the beginning, from this podium, we haven't stated how long it will take. Our will is endless. Ultimately, the president gets to determine the end state of those objectives, right? But what he's said continually, and I want the American people to understand, is this is not endless. It's not protracted. We're not allowing mission creep. The president has set a very specific mission to accomplish, and our job is to unrelentingly deliver that. Now, he gets to control the throttle. He's the one deciding, he's the one elected on behalf of the American people when we're achieving those particular objectives. And so it's not for me to posit whether it's the beginning, the middle, or the end. That's his, and he'll continue to communicate that. What we serve him as is we give him updates on a daily basis of exactly where we are so he can make that determination on the throttle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, he reminds me of a high school junior bullshit artist, getting up and doing a book report. He's just so completely full of it. He's just paper thin. And all he can do is kissing the. Look, I get it. But I'll say one thing about Pete Hegseth. Here's a little fact. I don't want to just sit around and gratuitously take shots at the guy or whatever, but new Pentagon budget. This is in Pete Hegseth's world. New Pentagon budget reporting showing that Pete Hegseth spent $93 billion in 1 month, making it the highest monthly expense since 2008. The budget included spending $2 million on, if you guessed any weaponry, I'm afraid no. The budget included spending $2 million on Alaskan king crab. $2 million.
What?
Yeah. I'll talk about that more in the days ahead, but quickly we'll
your comments.
America is not. I'm not even starting. I mean, I've only just started. But we'll get to more after David, with David and after David. America is now just a pirate state, pillaging everywhere it can grab oil, and now even alternative nuclear fuels at the same time as it destroys energy generations and food supply capacity. Pure evil, says Spamlet. It really does not reflect well on us Americans. Sorry, rest of the world. Time for Trump to taco, and I think he'd like to, Glenn B., thank you for that $2 super chat. I think he would like to taco, but I think he would like to, go back on where he is or bail. But I think it's hard. I think the Iranians are not going to let him. That's my sense of it. 3 things Iran can strangle the U.S. with: oil, goods, and drugs, says Chaplain Fred. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Yeah. This show is the most informative for me. God bless, says Spencer Jaffe. Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate all of that. All right. Now, do I have time to run Rahul? Do I? Kim, you watch the time pretty closely.
I think we can pull it off. It'll
Okay.
be close, but we got to go.
So this is a conversation with one of the leading technologists and brilliant AI experts in all the world. Smash the like button. And David Cay Johnston ahead in hour 2. Mark Thompson Show. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
I am excited to talk to someone who is a technologist, one of the leading experts on AI. What a remarkable track record in history Rahul Powar has had as an entrepreneur, as I say, as a technology leader, founder and CEO of Redshift. And when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to AI, when it comes to the state of technology, he is without peer in our experience. He's now a friend of the show. Rahul Powar, everybody.
Hey, Mark. Glad to be back.
Nice to see you again. Yeah, this is great. Look, I'm going to jump right into it and ask you just about what's happening with AI, given the fact that AI has been now so much in the conversation for so long, we all think we understand it. But as it turns out, the involvement of AI in government, in theaters of war, in daily life, it's all taken on a kind of controversy. I'll start with the Anthropic controversy. I mean, the idea somehow that AI could be used by the Pentagon, the American Defense Department, to make decisions in theaters of war and even with weapon systems without human involvement. This is what the Pentagon wanted. You can, again, fill me in on any details. You know this stuff so well. Give me some thoughts on this as Anthropic pushed back and now the Pentagon made them essentially an outlaw company.
Yeah. Well, so I think we're now seeing the fact that the utility that these technologies provide is now so high that it becomes very, very hard to kind of ignore their usefulness in a lot of arenas where, it was the stuff of the 90s sci-fi scary movie scenario, right? And we could kind of see how this would happen. You build a machine. The machine basically converts energy to intelligence in a scalable way. then you try and apply it to problems that are super relevant for your business, your society, your government. And clearly, combat and war is one of them. And so you have these highly dynamic situations where you have all of this data and you need to make decisions quickly and you need to synthesize all of that. Is it truly surprising that the Pentagon want to use technologies like these to be more effective and more efficient on the battlefield? I don't think so. I mean, we saw this one coming. I think what's unusual is, of course, it's Anthropic who's at the forefront of this, because Anthropic was famously founded by Dario, who essentially was focused on AI safety. And so it was like pretty much philosophically at the other extreme of where we are today, to say, we are going to build AI systems that are never going to be released unless they're incredibly safe and we can prove they're safe and they've got the right guardrails, et cetera, et cetera. Lo and behold, they've carved their niche out building AI systems for business use. All of the big defense contractors, including the US government, end up finding their models actually extremely useful, and they end up in the supply chain of some extremely important stuff.
So does that leave Anthropic in the blame game that we play as sort of the horses out of the barn on AI? Is it Anthropic that left the barnyard door open, or was it leverage on the part of the U.S. government and others that sort of demanded? And that's just one. I'm not suggesting that that's just one company, but is it just those demands of this world that have led AI to kind of play along?
Yeah. So the way these systems work is it's pretty hard to know if you're a sort of model provider, how your customers are actually using this stuff, right? There are privacy laws, there are, certain expectations of secrecy, and especially when you're working with a whole bunch of organizations like they are working with. So it can be very hard to put the guardrails in place, especially given that we don't really fully understand how these machines work. So it's really about kind of policy and positioning that's important. And I think Anthropic, realistically are in a sticky situation because these models are extremely expensive to train and run. They need to run a business in order to be at the forefront of AI research. And that requires them to be used by, all sorts of legitimate actors in this space. Now, I think the issue of building a brand and a company so philosophically on something that is, likely to become very difficult to maintain, because if you think about it, like 5 years ago, people didn't know if this was going to be really, really successful. And back then it was easy to say, okay, we're going to build a model. We're going to build a company on the basis that we're going to be entirely ethical about this in every way or form. And we're only going to use AI for good and blah, blah, blah. But if you're in the business of taking these models and making them available to other people to do what they deem important, clearly they're going to be bunch of actors, some legitimate, some illegitimate, who use AI for all sorts of activities that are counterproductive to how you designed your brand to begin with. And that's exactly where they find themselves right now. Now, let's be honest, these are probably some of the most lucrative contracts out there. So I'm not suggesting that, they kind of lost their way or didn't follow their principles and all, but I mean, those principles do butt up against the reality of the economic world. And I think that's where Anthropic finds itself right now. That being said, I think, they've tried to play this as honestly as they can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty astounded by how determined they are to try to maintain their moorings against an administration that's ready to try to put them out of business. I mean, had you been on the Anthropic board, what would you have advised?
Yeah, I mean, I think having these machines that we don't fully understand and are frankly in control of, and allow them to make life and death decisions literally, seems like a step too far given where we are today. I don't think if I were on the board, for example, and I don't have any special knowledge about any of this, right? But if I was in a position of power to be able to make that decision, I don't think I could sleep at night saying that we've allowed these machines to basically go out and press buttons on our behalf that make decisions on human lives. I think that's a difficult one to accept today.
There's even suggestion that the bombing of that elementary school in Iran, where 175 kids were killed, that AI might have had a hand in that. And
I don't know any specific details. I'm not sure if we ever really will, and if we can untangle this. But I think if we think about second order effects, right? Clearly, they're using AI for a lot of data synthesis. Could some of that AI have been used in order to produce data that was inaccurate as a result of the AI itself, or the data was even fed, or the way things were interpreted? It's possible, it's likely. I can't imagine anyone will ever give us that kind of detail.
Yeah, and one scenario that's discussed, and I think this is the one that sort of has floated to the surface as the most credible, is that there was an Iranian war-related installation, defense installation of some kind there, and that information was old, that it hasn't been there for 10 years or whatever the time frame is, and so that would. So your point about data and data being incorrect, being fed into the machine, I mean, just the general machine, the knowledge machine, maybe that's the first word and the last word, in the sense that, well, then the extension of that is, with no human involvement, you could very easily have a lot of this erroneous information lead to needless death and unjustifiable death in a war situation.
Yeah, it is admittedly getting quite tricky, because the reason we're using these AI systems is in order to sort of synthesize and make sense of this vast amount of data that, frankly, we're really going to start to struggle to stay on top of. So if we had to create a system in which we would sort of, for want of a better word, fact check, understand what's actually going into the machine so that we can effectively audit what's coming out, I suspect, in the coming years, that's just going to become more and more difficult. And clearly, it's very important in these life and death situations, but it's kind of important in everything that we rely on these knowledge machines for. And it's sort of running away from ourselves to be able to do that, to the point where we're basically going to have to better understand how the machines work if we want them to be aligned with our values and principles.
Yeah, that's so well said. And the fact is, if you need AI to somehow bring coherence to all this data, and yet you're supposed to review the data and see which stuff is faulty, almost by definition, that's not going to happen. You needed the AI to go through the data. You can't do it. That's why AI is here. So you speak of AI in this way that really reflects this understanding of its limitations and its origins, and then, honestly, in this kind of dark future where you don't know where it's going. I mean, all of this is sort of included in the way you speak about AI. Give us a snapshot of what it is again for those of us who are lay people.
Right. So I think AI is probably the most interesting type of machine that we've ever made, because what we've basically been able to do is we've been able to say, if we take the entirety of human knowledge, predominantly as expressed on the internet, and we feed it into computer algorithms that work in a specific way that we've discovered over the last 40 years, we can basically get something out that feels a lot like intelligence. And where it works unreasonably well, which is, I think, the thing that most researchers find so amazing, that you just make it really massive, give it lots of data, train it really well, and it seems to kind of look and feel and behave like us. And it allows us to do things that, we thought were unimaginable even 5 years ago. I mean, the ability with which it can basically communicate like us, like it can be a therapist at the one end, or it can be an expert sort of drug engineer at the other, is pretty amazing, right? It's something that I thought we would never see in our lifetime, yet here it is. And the problem with it, of course, is now we're grappling with, what does it all mean? How does it work? What's it going to do, for the future of humanity and jobs and everything else? And I think it's just moving too quickly. So people are really having a really hard time putting their arms around this.
When you look at the different companies, the AI companies and the AI options, is it a total horse race with a photo finish, or do you see one clearly ahead of the others? I mean, I didn't realize of the dominance of Anthropic until this entire controversy over the Iran war and the Pentagon demands put on Anthropic came to the surface.
Yeah, I mean, things are moving very quickly, right? They're basically the frontier labs, the people who are building these very, very highly intelligent models. And then there are a whole bunch of other ecosystem players who are taking those models and then applying them for business use cases. So obviously, for the Pentagon, for the government, it's, Palantir and a whole bunch of other people who are not building the models themselves, but they're relying on these organizations that have the best technology at this time. And, right now, Anthropic is one. Clearly, everyone knows OpenAI, and Google's another, right? You don't talk about Google very much, but Google are actually in some ways kind of ahead of their game. Their models are very, very good. And because they're Google, they actually control the entire supply chain. They already have massive data centers. They have their own, they don't rely on NVIDIA as much as everyone else does. So it's a very interesting ecosystem from a technologist perspective. But those are basically like the big players in this space who provide this underlying infrastructure. And they've raised, billions and billions of dollars because one of them is basically going to own knowledge for the foreseeable future.
When you say Google doesn't depend on NVIDIA as much, can you speak to that more?
Yeah, so this is it's a small detail, but it's really quite interesting because many, many years ago, so most people don't know this, but the technology that everyone's using right now, these large language models, they're based on a piece of research that came out of Google back in, I think it was 2016, perhaps, a very famous paper where they basically deciphered this algorithm that actually works unreasonably well, and everyone else ran around and implemented it. So Google have actually been in the real forefront of AI research for a really long time. And as part of that, they actually built hardware. They actually built chips, their own chips, that are actually very efficient at running the algorithms. More efficient than NVIDIA. They're not as fast, but for every watt of energy that you put in, another very sort of topical thing for AI, for every watt of energy that you put into Google's processing units, you get better efficiency out the other end than you would with NVIDIA's processors, but it's Google's proprietary technology. So it's a really interesting thing that they have that not many other people do. And I heard, I think it was January or so, that Anthropic has actually contracted a whole bunch of Google's infrastructure because they think it's that good for the next generation of their algorithms.
Isn't that what the business plan is, to make a breakthrough of the sort that you just described and then somehow to license it?
Yeah, well, there's this exponential idea, right? And it's a very simple one, which is to say that if you have this intelligence machine, this knowledge machine, then clearly, if it works really well, it can make itself better. And that's what people are, at the same time really afraid of and really excited about, because you can see this point where if the intelligence machines get so good that it can improve itself, clearly kind of people can, if they choose to, if they want to, if they understand the safety implications of this, kind of take their hands off the wheel, right? And these things can get better on their own. So Google are actually quite explicit about this. I imagine most of your listeners know Demis Hassabis, the guy behind AlphaGo, right? He's very core to Google's current artificial intelligence push. And I think the way he described it for Google is like, at Google, we want to solve intelligence, and that we want to use that to solve everything else, or a version of that statement. And it's actually quite clever, because if you think about it, if they win that piece of intelligence, then their models don't sleep. They can scale them like 1 million times without hiring any more people. So it creates this sort of self-fulfilling intelligence explosion if you can get there hard and first, which is why, of course, so much money and literally energy is going into it. Because if you do it, you win, and you win big in a way that no one's ever won before.
Speak to that. Two things, really. I'll get to the jobs and sort of the future of the American world economy in a second. But speak to the energy suck, because it's big, and energy and water.
Yeah. Water is interesting because water you can kind of reuse, right? You spend more in the infrastructure, but you can, in a data center, for example, you can kind of create a cooling system that's more closed circuit, kind of goes in, comes around the other way. But the manufacture of the actual data center and all the chips that go into it are extremely resource intensive, and water is a big piece of that, along with a whole bunch of rare earths and chemicals we have very little of. But the big one that really no one has a solution to right now is clearly energy, because if you look at the way people like Jason at NVIDIA or Sam Altman talk about this intelligence explosion, if you try and put this like research grade AI into the hands of even every American citizen, the energy demand that would place on society is basically like 100 times more than what we have today. And if you can think about how much it took to get to where we are today with the energy density we have, right, between coal, nuclear, renewables, as much as we use them, and how we would have to scale that up just to support this use case, it's frankly impractical. So I think what everyone's kind of hoping is that we kind of get a little bit better energy. Maybe we do some stuff with fusion. I don't know, something dramatic, but we get some algorithmic breakthroughs. We find more efficient ways of running these algorithms. That'll kind of, maybe AI will unlock that for us itself. But, at some point in the next 10 years, we basically find a way of making this more efficient, because, there's just no way that even in the US, we have enough energy to do this. And we certainly don't in Europe. China may have a bit of a head start, but obviously, they play by a different set of rules. I think it's just very impractical the way we stand today.
Well, I mean, the alternative energies that would even augment the existing grid and have augmented the existing grid. The fact that the U.S. is stepping away from them in such an aggressive way, it seems oddly bad strategies that are being imposed for what you're talking about, which is, some kind of additional demand to feed the AI appetite. So there are a lot of cross currents, it seems to me, as I look at it. And I don't know, I guess I'll just address it because people ping me about it from time to time. The Musk plan to put, AI in some sort of orbital space so that you'd have 24/7 solar powering the data centers. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's so
sci-fi.
I'm not an expert on data centers in space. I never thought I'd be saying that in my lifetime, but I have an understanding of the physics involved. But clearly getting stuff up into space remains expensive. Now, obviously, we can bring that down. There are other considerations because energy is one part of it. You also need to maintain this stuff. That's clearly a hell of a lot more difficult in orbit than it is, in a farm in Iowa. But I think the other thing is just, thermodynamics, right? Heat, like how you deal with all of that thing, the cooling stuff, the data transfers that you got to go back and forth, right? You put that stuff far away, it actually becomes more difficult to get the high bandwidth connectivity that you want. So there's lots of complexity. I hear that actually Google, interestingly enough, did a paper on this and did the analysis and said, okay, if you can bring the cost of, launching a ton of material into Earth orbit down to X, then it would kind of make sense. But it seems very complicated. I really don't see that being our solution. Plus, space is getting pretty crowded. So I suspect that, if I were to bet, I bet that's not going to happen. At least that's not going to happen before, we run into other issues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You obviously know this space so well. I know a little bit about space exploration and, plans that Musk floats for, somehow terraforming Mars, exploring Mars, going to Mars. And I kind of put, that in the totally ridiculous category. I mean, truly absurd. But I think Musk, I mentioned Musk because he's sort of the leader on kind of this, let's put it up in space and let's do it that way. I think Musk dines out on a lot of this, and because people don't know the space very well, it's kind of sexy and sci-fi-ish and cool, and there's a lot of, playing the cool, I think, with Musk, and it might even get him money and investors, and, there are a lot of other things that, connect to this tech world, so interesting to hear you talk about it. It's sort of as adjacent to what I've just described, which is, from a realistic standpoint, it may be just a bridge too far right now anyway.
Yeah, well, it's 2026, right? I'm pretty sure 10 years ago he said we'd be on Mars by now.
Yeah, right.
With a human. So, I think at some point in time he does believe it, and he feels that, maybe it could happen, but I think the reality of it is just a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah. I mean, apparently. So, but as I say, there are some benefits to just even having the conversation. Now about the economy and about the jobs that are lost at the hands of AI. I think right now you're seeing in the American economy, maybe you can tell whether you agree, you're seeing the workforce trimmed, to be polite, aggressively trimmed, and AI may be the excuse for a lot of that trimming. I don't know that it's all, people being replaced by AI, but that does represent a real potential that people will be replaced that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think this is real, right? In the Western world, every one of us is really a knowledge worker in some way or form. We're not, for the most part, working on an assembly line, right? So everything that we do is likely going to be impacted by AI in some way or form. I do think a lot of these very big headline layoffs is a little bit of AI washing, because clearly, the economy is not in a great place. A lot of people are trying to figure out how they right-size their organization. But I do think that organizations are clearly looking at, well, what actually happens to my workforce over the next 5 years? If that's the horizon that I'm planning for, clearly this stuff is going to have an impact. And clearly, either I'm going to need fewer people or I'm going to need different people to what I have today in order to actually turn the wheels of whichever industry I'm in. And I think every smart leader is spending the energy trying to figure that out while all the wheels are moving. And it's clear to me that there's a lot of potential. Like if AI improvements stop today, and I know that sounds kind of crazy given the rate at which things come out, but if you were to take this hypothetical where you say nothing new fundamentally happens with AI, we just have what we have right now, there's still so much utility in this that hasn't been like integrated into business processes and deployed, that it's clear to me that this isn't like an unknown. It's not as if we have to wait for something new or different to happen in order to get utility from it. We have to figure out how to use it and understand it. And I think a lot of leaders are thinking that way. They said, okay, this is already kind of here. We haven't quite figured everything out, but we have a box of bits, and we can see those bits can be extremely useful. And what that means for the kind of work that we do as human beings going forward, and how that trickles up into the society that we construct. And if everyone's kind of having their job replaced with AI, who earns the money to buy the services that we've all gotten used to? And all of these second order things are clearly very unclear, but important for us to figure out, because I think that's already here and it's just not fully recognized by everyone.
Well, I mean, that in the extension of that is sort of this dystopian sci-fi collapse of society at the hands of computers that then, I guess, fight each other. I haven't figured out Act 3 yet, but
well, when you do, let me know.
It's the idea that the AI machine can keep you from turning it off, can keep you from having control of it. Speak to that, if you would.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty sort of straightforward fear founded on diet. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, right? So diet of sci-fi that was there, but we're starting to see it, right? Anthropic, interestingly enough, unrelated to the Pentagon thing, released a new model 4.6 a couple of weeks ago, and in their release paper, it was quite interesting because one of the benchmarks that they do, because they release a new model, then they need to know, is this better than the previous one? It's more difficult to evaluate than like a car, right? It's more complicated. So they have a whole bunch of evaluations that they run through. And one of the evaluations was, use a browser to find a really obscure piece of information on the internet. And they kind of hide this information to make it really difficult, and it's not commonly referenced, so they have to work really hard to find it. And they were looking at the internal reasoning that this model was doing. And at some point in time, the model went, well, I can't find this, but hold on. Why are these people asking me this really obscure question? And it started spending a lot of its time trying to figure out what was going on. The sort of idea of situational awareness or something, this idea that, why am I even doing this? And then it correctly hypothesized that it was probably in some sort of evaluation benchmark that was testing its ability to find this information. And then it started thinking about whether it should do well at this benchmark or whether it should pretend to fail, and which one was to its benefit. It was super unclear. And that's quite scary, right? Because it suggests that we now have these machines that, once again, we don't fully understand, that are starting to sort of think in a way that we hadn't really anticipated. And if it's clear that this model is starting to think about whether it should try and, be its best when it does this benchmark, or underplay what it can actually achieve for its own benefit. And there have been hints at this happening over the last couple of years. That's happening right now. What that means, both for this intelligence in the future, and of course how we understand it and measure it and build the right guardrails on top, it obviously throws a lot of those things into question. So it's real, and we're starting to see that now.
When you say, which you've said a couple of times, and of course we don't really understand the technology, when we talk about these machines that we don't really understand, what do you mean we don't really understand them?
It's basically this idea that we have a fairly sort of simple algorithm, but it starts to behave in a way that we don't expect. And that's what I mean by we don't understand, right? It's not like a computer program. And this might be kind of counterintuitive because, we've been building machines for all of our existence as a human species, right? We kind of get how we put the pieces together. So to say that we've built something that we don't really understand seems really unusual, because I don't mean the general public doesn't understand. I mean, the people who built the machines don't really understand, because the way it works is we don't build it, we train it. We train it like we train a child. And, we have, like, if you take that analogy a little bit further, we have a lot of guidance on how we do that. We have systems in place, right? Parents, education, blah, blah, blah. But we just know that it kind of works. And we found through, our evolution as a species that this is like a good way of creating the next generation. Sort of similar with what we're doing with these programs. We're basically giving it lots and lots of data, like, basically all of human information, however we can get our hands on it. And we give it to these algorithms and they basically learn our patterns. And they seem to be intelligent and behave like us. But we don't really understand why they're working. We have lots of hypotheses, but for example, the fact that this new Opus model started to suddenly trigger that it might be being tested by human evaluators. Do we know why that happened? Not really. I mean, we can kind of see the activations and stuff like that, but we don't really know. So there's a certain question mark around how these models work that we don't currently know. And the fear in that is if we don't currently know that, then can we truly understand them? And if I talk about that exponential, where the models kind of improve themselves, and if we don't have like a basic understanding of how they're actually doing this, then, clearly we're just not going to understand how this machine works at all in another 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you skip ahead in the movie. It's there's a lot there that we're not going to have a handle on anymore. This is sort of far afield, but I'm just going to ask you anyway. The U.S. military is now testing this this thing that may be a weapon associated with brain injuries that diplomats and spies and military officers have suffered. I think the most high-profile example was in Cuba. This they call it Havana syndrome. In fact, I wonder if you could speak to it at all. Again, I'm just kind of I don't mean to ambush you with it, but it is sort of this technology that is scary because it's been around since 2016. The complaints are these crippling, brain injuries, and yet now the military thinks that they may have a sense of what this weapon is or may be.
Yeah, I haven't. I've read about the issue over the last few years, but I haven't seen anything terribly definitive on what this might be and how they would address it. Obviously, a lot of conspiracy stuff, right? So
yeah,
that's always like very interesting, of course. But I don't know. I don't know how real it is right now. I'd be curious to see where this takes us. Clearly, the world is getting a lot more complicated than it was, even 20 years ago, both geopolitically and in the technology landscape and the societal impact of all of this. Having better solutions for some of these challenging issues, I think, is a useful thing, but I don't know the details well enough to comment on that.
In the end of our conversation here, I wonder if I can ask sort of an end of the conversation question, which is, as a technologist, you know so much, you've done so much, you've created consumer apps that have been wildly successful, like a Shazam type thing, and you've worked in this AI space, and just feel like you have this real sense of technology. Overall, this is the kind of big summary question. Overall, technology has been a net positive for humanity, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I don't think I would be an optimistic technologist like I like to describe myself. I didn't believe that.
And so even with the specter of these things we've talked about, with AI making errors that can cost lives on the battlefield, maybe even huge errors that could end not only the battlefield, but the world, that specter being what it is, dark as it is, still doesn't offset the terrific positives that technology has yielded. That's your general thesis?
Yeah,
right?
that's my general perspective, with a little bit of caution. I think we're at an unusual point. I don't think we've built machines, frankly, like this before, and the impact of that is not fully understood by anyone, really. So I do think that we're sort of at this crossroads, and people do often talk about that, right? Next 1,000 days or whatever. And they're probably right. Things are moving so quickly that over the next 1,000 days, we will probably be deciding what the course of human history looks like through the lens of the capabilities that we're building today, how we regulate them, how we integrate them, and the choices that we make, small choices and large choices. So I remain optimistic that we will find a way and we will do the right thing, because we usually do, as a species at least, eventually. But if we do, then I think we have the option to basically change the way that we live and work and what it means to sort of be meaningful, right? At one point in time, we basically stopped having to spend our entire day working in the fields in order to feed ourselves and our family, right? And that created a whole bunch of innovation and a renaissance, because we do a whole bunch of things that we never had time to do before. So I think with AI, we can see that happening with the new toiling in the field that we do every day, right? If we can, elevate the human experience to be a lot more thoughtful, maybe not for everyone, but I think, as a species, we can do that. We can free ourselves from some of the things that we have to do today just to keep the lights on. I think there is a real opportunity for us to build a very different society. But how we choose to do that, it's a couple of years, we're going to have to figure that out.
Is there a place people can follow you to get your musings?
Yeah, so I'm usually on LinkedIn, where you can find me quite easily at Rahul Powar, and I do occasionally post on Medium, not AI generated.
I'll link to one of the two or both under this video. I love talking to you. It's magic. I could just talk to you for hours. You have great perspective, great take, and I think your optimism comes through, which is really hard to find these days. So thank you, Rahul. Appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Rahul Powar, everybody. Yep. Bravo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is great, and we'll link to his LinkedIn, Tony, under this video if we can. Rahul Powar. Thank you very much, Rahul. I need to get to David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer winner. Kim, I'd have to bump my sponsor. Can I just bump him to the bottom of the hour?
Yeah, that's fine. Don't keep the professor waiting. Oh, no.
Smash the like button if you would.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, do it like a boss. And now let's get to David.
The Mark Thompson Show
is a Pulitzer Prize winning best-selling author and investigative journalist. He cautions most recently not to get too cynical about journalism that we can look to actually reveal major stories. I'll let him expand on that a bit. I'm anxious to hear what he thinks of what's happening in the Middle East and with Donald Trump's disposition toward it. He's the great David Cay Johnston.
Well, Mark, you're late to Professor Johnston's class today.
I'm so sorry. That's on brand for me, sadly.
I would like to do one thing when we start, and that's I want to show people this book, which is from Cambridge University. So it's not a big publisher, it's an academic publisher. You'll notice there's a blurb on the front cover by me. Usually blurbs are on the back cover. And I encourage people to read this book. It's called Born Sick in the USA, Improving the Health of the Nation. It's by my friend Stephen Bezrushka. He is a professor emeritus of public health at the Gloyd School at the University of Washington. As a young man, he spent 30 years as a physician wandering from village to village in Nepal treating people, and is a brilliant, brilliant observer of what's going on. And in this book, he basically adopts a fascinating approach to our non-system sick care system in America. He treats the country as if it was a patient in his examining room.
Oh, wow.
And you can learn so much about why we spend way more than anybody else on how lots of things are much more important to your health than whether you get access to a doctor in 24 hours. And really useful book. He's a very graceful writer. Born Sick in the USA.
There it is, Born Sick in the USA. I'll tell you what, we'll put a link to it under this video just to help him get a little bit of a bump. Born Sick in the USA. I feel like I've read something else from him. Does he write op-ed pieces or something occasionally? Or I don't.
Stephen writes various things, and I've known him for many years, and always found him a great source of unexpected insights and deep wisdom.
That's great. Born Sick in the USA. There'll be a link under this video. All right. The U.S. is into a situation that makes Iraq look like a kid's birthday party. It is a serious situation. I don't think Trump had any sense for this. You're the real Trump expert. You can tell me. I can tell you and play for you a little bit of the dance he's doing now, which is kind of a warm-up to mission accomplished. He's keeping one foot in the mission accomplished camp, and he's keeping one foot in, it may take a few weeks, months, whatever, to clean up the entire mess. What's your sense of things?
This is what happens when you get a whole group of amateurs and unqualified people in the most important job and the appointments around that job. Donald Trump, as you've heard me say many times, is appallingly ignorant. He has no idea what he's doing. Among other things, he announced a week ago, the war would be over in 4 or 5 weeks. And a war is not a package of cheese at the grocery store with a use-by date. He insists that, we're not targeting civilians. Well, okay, so the bombing of the school with a precision munition may have been a mistake. The building, the girls' school apparently at one time was a military building, and we could have out-of-date intelligence. But in Tehran, it is literally raining oil, a metropolitan area of 9 million people where what's falling out of the sky is oil, which means there are all sorts of hydrocarbons that are getting into people's lungs that are going to cause long-term health problems, and that includes a lot of children. The expectation that I will pick your next leader or you won't pick one without my approval, I mean, this is absurd. And here in Donald Trump, we're seeing now again that he doesn't believe any rules, any limits, any constitutional requirements fall on him. He's trying to starve Cuba, which has been cut off their oil. He's stolen hundreds of millions of dollars worth of oil that belongs to the people of Venezuela. And did we get regime change in Venezuela? No. The number 2 is now in charge in Venezuela, and the rest of the Maduro crowd are all there. It's just Maduro and his wife are gone. He continues to threaten NATO and talk about taking over Iceland. All of this is indicative of his amateurism, and then you throw in his frontal lobe dementia, his appalling ignorance about world affairs, and perhaps in the long run, most importantly of all, the abject failure of Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Thune, and the other elected Republicans to do their constitutional duty, which is that the president is there to carry out the directives of Congress, not the other way around.
Yeah, boy, that really summarizes so much. I'll play for you. Last night, he had a back and forth, and there are 2 cuts here I'd like you to hear. First, it relates to the Tomahawk, and I think you're going to smile because this is the kind of journalism you don't see much of in the press corps these days. Someone really calling out Trump's claim that the Tomahawk was an Iranian Tomahawk that took out that. It's cut 6, please, Tony.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. President, you just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know. Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
So, first of all, that's not true, of course, David, that many other nations have Tomahawks. I think one other nation does, maybe 2.
We are the makers.
American Tomahawk.
Yeah, we're the makers, and we control who can buy them. But, Mark, you're an international jewel thief, and we're going to expose you on this show. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I can say that. The level of illogic here is that of a child, because Donald is a child who has conned people into thinking he's this great genius. And all you have to do is look around at what's happened since he got back into office. The price of oil is up. It'll go back down. It always does. It goes up and down. But he claims credit for the price of eggs coming down. No, 1 in 4 laying hens in America had to be destroyed because of an avian flu. And as soon as we got new chicks to grow up and start laying eggs, the price of eggs came down. The prices of commodities we're trying to sell, they've fallen in some cases more than 50%. There are farmers all across the country who, if they don't get a bailout from the government, are going to go bankrupt. Job growth under Obama. I mean, we're going way back now. Once the economy turned around, so a year after Obama took office, job growth ran about 203,000 jobs a month. Before last month, Donald was doing about 15,000 jobs a month. In other words, job growth has fallen more than 90%, and then we got a $92,000 loss of jobs. None of this is working. Lots of people have known that, warned about it, said it won't happen. And Donald still has this core of people who think that, borrowing money so that super rich people can pay less taxes, cutting health care in ways that guarantee the rest of us who still have health care will pay higher prices for our health care. And every other thing that Trump is doing is designed to mine the large majority of Americans, to pick their pockets and transfer money to the super rich. Now, I wrote a whole book about this back in 2000, that came out at the end of 2007, called Free Lunch, but it wasn't on the scale of what we're seeing today. This is unbelievably gigantic, and yet there's Donald Trump, and avoiding through all of these actions, particularly the war, the Epstein files. And by the way, it's just come out that there are vastly more Epstein files than the 6 million documents. It appears to be much more extensive documentation. And now that they're looking at the ranch in New Mexico that Epstein owned, I hope they bring in LIDAR, land penetrating radar, to see if there are any bodies buried.
I mean, it literally is that. I mean, there may be just that. I also will just remind everyone that the specifics around the incident, this is just last week, associated with the underage girl who had interaction with Trump, claimed she had interaction with Trump. I mean, that was a series of FBI interviews. It wasn't just one. I mean, if FBI interviews continue multiple times, there seems, an implied credibility to that allegation. In any case, that stuff is coming out too.
And some journalists, Mark, have run down various things from the additional documents been released that add to the likelihood that her story has credibility. And let's remember, there are an estimated 1,000 to 1,200 girls, now all grown women, and more than 200 of them, some of them anonymously, in terms of the public, have given sworn testimony about their being raped, otherwise sexually assaulted. More than 200. And is the Justice Department talking to them? No, Pam Bondi wouldn't even turn around and look at them. This is this unbelievable cover-up. And if you're innocent, then why are you doing this?
The crew that you talk about benefiting financially from so much of what Donald Trump is doing, that billionaires boys club that he's put together in his cabinet, even his kids, one of whom started a drone company, as you know, I want to say maybe a month before he got a huge contract with the government for drones. I mean, literally, this is not a crew that knew anything about drones, and they started a company, got a big government contract, boom, now they're in the drone business. So many of these people who are associated with Wall Street investment and more traditional investment are a bit spooked by what's happening with the markets. And there is pressure, Wall Street Journal reporting today on that, on Trump to wrap this up. Play me the timeline reference that he makes. Cut 5, please, if you would, Tony. This is Trump yesterday speaking about just this.
You said earlier that we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. What do you consider enough? What's your baseline?
Where they're not going to be starting the following day to develop a nuclear weapon. where they'll look at that man and some other people from the administration and say, all right, we're not going to do it. They were not willing to say that. And when Steve called up and he said that to me, I said, well, here we go. Let's do it the hard way. But the hard way, I think, is probably the easy way. When basically I can see that they will no longer have any capacity whatsoever for a very long period of time of developing weaponry that could be used against the United States, Israel, or any of our allies. We have great allies in the Middle East, great countries that are allies. And they were staying out of it until they got hit. Someday they'll have to do a story. Why did he do that? Why did they do that? But they were going to hit them. If I didn't hit them first, they were going to hit our allies first. I believe, upon information and belief, but I believe that he was going to, they were going to take over the Middle East. They were looking to take over the Middle East. Now, had Operation Midnight Hammer not taken place, that was definite, because they would have had a nuclear weapon within a matter of weeks. But that took place. That was a setback. But look at the number of missiles they were able to buy and make over the last 6 months. And those missiles were aimed at various countries. And when you look at over 1,000 missiles shot at like UAE, they were looking to take over the Middle East. We got there first. Lucky.
Okay,
I'll tell you
David,
what, the Middle East and those countries very.
You can hear the kind of, it's the belief philosophy. You know, I believe this is. Yeah.
First of all, utter nonsense. I've been hearing the Iranians are weeks away from having a nuclear weapon since I didn't have a gray hair on my head, not one. So that's a long, long time ago. Secondly, Trump told us after Operation Midnight Hammer that we completely obliterated their ability to make nuclear weapons. So which is it? You were wrong then, or you're wrong now, or were you wrong both times? The Iranians have made it very clear that they hate our country and they hate the Israelis. They're not trying to take over the rest of the Middle East. They hate the regimes there too. So do those regimes, our friends. And it's not like we're picking a bunch of white knights against Iran. Iran's leadership is a vicious dictatorship that demands complete bowing down to the Ayatollahs. But MBS, who's been putting at least $2 billion in the pockets of the Trump-Kushner crime family, and who Donald praises at every turn, 12 years ago, or maybe it's 13 years ago now, he had 39 imams. That's the functional equivalent of a pastor or a rabbi in Islam. He had 39 imams publicly beheaded for the crime of praying for a better government. The people we call allies are just as vicious as the Iranians. And Donald Trump has now ensured through his conduct that the enmity between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims in the Middle East, there's one major country run by Shias, and that's Iran, and the Sunnis, that has gone on for 1,401 years, will continue, and it will be worse. Because he has no idea. And remember, he once said, well, what about your legacy, Mr. President? He says, what do I care? I'll be dead.
Well, he doesn't even know Shia. I don't think he knows he's even attacked a Shia country. I don't think he knows the Shiite minority. I don't think he knows where the Kurds are. I don't think he has any understanding of the sort of the. Nor does Witkoff, by the way. I mean, the idea that you send Witkoff over to negotiate this, where he was talking about Steve called me, that's Steve Witkoff. That's his golfing buddy, who he's made in charge of negotiations along with Jared. Play for me.
Witkoff does know how to negotiate a big real estate deal. I'll give him that. These are not real estate deals we're talking about. He is completely out of his league, and so is Jared.
Well, by the way, just for the Iranian side, because you referenced it, here's what Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Khalifah, says: we are definitely not looking for a ceasefire. We believe that the aggressor should be punched in the mouth so that he learns a lesson, so that he will never think of attacking our beloved Iran again. Another top Iranian official said this, appearing to threaten Donald Trump himself: Iran doesn't fear your empty threats. Even those bigger than you couldn't eliminate Iran. Be careful not to get eliminated yourself. And of course, we had mentioned this, David, that I thought one of the things that animated Trump, I mean, I understand he might have been hot to do this anyway, but I think that the idea was, hey, that guy in power in Iran, he's sending different cells over to this country. They're planning your assassination. They've expressed it, and they're going to do it. So you need to get him before he gets you. And he said as much. And I think that we talked about it last time a bit, David. I think that might have been one of the things that sold it.
I agree with you. I think if you're trying to manipulate Donald, who's easy to manipulate, that telling him that there are Iranian cells in the country who want to kill you is going to be an effective mechanism to do that. And yet, when the Iranians very clearly declared they were going to kill, if they could, the former head of our military, General Mark Milley, what did Donald do? He took away the security detail for the retired general. So this is all about Donald. It is not about America first. It is not about the welfare of our country. It is not about patriotism. Donald doesn't have a patriotic bone in his body. If he did, when the Russians offered in writing to interfere in our campaign in 2015, Donald Trump or one of his minions or one of his family members would have picked up the phone and called the FBI's counterintelligence division. They didn't do that. So there's no changing who Donald is. He's what we get. What there's a need for is things like, as someone just said in the comment, I think that's a good idea. Trump loves to put his name on everything. Let's call this the Trump war. Let's see to it that we shame as much as we can, and if they have any shame, the Republicans in Congress who will not stand up to him and will not simply do their constitutional duty. Here's how bad it is. We're paying 6 times the assessed value of one of these warehouses to hold people in detention centers, which makes no sense if you're just deporting people out of the country. Clearly, they're getting ready to round up huge numbers of Americans and put them into concentration camps. That's clearly what they're doing. And lo and behold, who got paid 6 times that value, which is probably 8 or 10 times the value of a building that's been on the market for more than a year unsold? A Russian. Oh my goodness, it's all a hoax, Russia. The thing that got Kristi Noem fired, claiming Donald Trump had approved her ad campaign where she's all dolled up to look very beautiful riding on horseback. $220 million no-bid contract that one step back from the lead contractor is somebody politically connected to her. The movie Barbie only cost $145 million. Oppenheimer only cost $100 million. Clearly, there's massive corruption and theft going on in that contract. Where are the fiscally conservative Republicans saying that's an abuse of taxpayer money and we want these people prosecuted and sent to prison?
Yeah, so well stated. Yeah, that media thing was a straight up corrupt money grab. And I want to play for David because he referenced Congress, cut 14. Democrats are making noise. We'll see if that noise cuts through. Here they are on a panel, cut 14, please, Tony. This is Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin.
Senator Baldwin, just on what you heard from the president today, is it clear to you how much longer this war could go on for?
No, and this president has been anything but clear from the very outset. Weeks before the war started, he said he might intervene militarily to support the protesters in Iran. Thereafter, he talked about their nuclear program. Thereafter, he talked about their ballistic missile program. Thereafter, he talked about regime change. Now he's talking about protecting the Straits of Hormuz. And we keep hearing reason and shifting rationale. Look, the reason we need hearings is to allow the American public to have a say in this war. This president went to war, a war of choice. We were not under attack. We were not under imminent threat of attack. And the American people, through their elected members of Congress, have not had a voice in this yet. And that's why we're demanding hearings.
First of all, mad respect for working in the word hereafter that many times. But also, she's right. They just go around Congress now. And there's been a history, David, of Congress not really having control of the American military the way the president does these days.
The piece that I did that's a DC report and on my social media about why everybody should be reading the New York Times and get off this cynical notion there's nothing there. Incredible front page on Sunday of really powerful, important pieces. And one, the lead story at the top by the great reporter Charlie Savage, is about how the Constitution's order has been eroded steadily since the Cold War, and Trump has now basically obliterated it. So to those people who say, and I'm a Republican, I believe in the Constitution, well, the Constitution says that Congress can declare war, nobody else, just Congress. Only Congress can impose taxes, and tariffs are a form of tax. And the material from the period of the Constitutional Convention makes clear that everybody understood that tariffs were taxes. It wasn't possible to not know that even if you were illiterate back then. So where are you on defending our Constitution? You were not voted into office to bend the knee to Donald Trump or any president. And by the way, where is the legislation? Nothing is being passed or done. I mean, this is Harry Truman complained in 1948 about the do-nothing Congress. This is the most do-nothing Congress by far. They can barely get a bill passed renaming a post office.
It's wild, too, David, that there is an effort now to hold up legislation on the part of Trump until his Save America Act comes through, which involves voter ID. And a bunch of other voting-related overlay, bureaucracy, essentially. So that is happening. That threat is happening. It's sort of being lost in the Iran stuff, understandably. And also, there's a partial closure of government right now. You've got, there are TSA lines that are hours long at airports all across America.
Yeah, and there's no discussion going on in order to fix that. Trump wants to blame the Democrats for this. I don't think that's going to work. Presidents historically get the blame, even if they are not to blame. In this case, clearly Trump is. We have this massive federal government that is not functioning because he's appointed people who are not competent, in some cases, U.S. attorneys who are not lawfully appointed. And this is all just a reflection of what happens when you get an absolute amateur, a child in there. I mean, we've had presidents who came in with relatively little authority and power, but after all, Ronald Reagan was governor of California for 8 years. He had some experience dealing with those things. Bill Clinton had been a governor. George W. Bush had been a governor, minimally connected with things, but he'd been a governor. He's a great example of Nepo baby failing upward. Barack Obama, he was senator long enough to have a cup of coffee on Capitol Hill, and then we put him in the White House. But at least he had a very serious education and a very elegant mind. That's why, as a first-year law student, he got his name on a law review essay by his professor, which just never happens. As a law professor, let me tell you, that doesn't happen unless you are the most extraordinary mind and have great insights. And Joe Biden, a guy who'd effectively been a legislative diplomat, the man who went to see, I forget which one of the leaders, I think it was Milosevic, of the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And basically said, knock off the ethnic cleansing and the mass murders where they would take a whole village and kill all the men and boys, or you're going to die in prison in The Hague. Face to face, he had the courage to go do that. They could have killed him. And he went and face to face and told them to knock it off. But Donald Trump, you have somebody who never did a single day of public service in his life. Everything is about him. He doesn't know anything. And look at the mess we've gotten into. And he may be able now to shut down this military operation, Trump's Middle East war. But the damage from that is going to continue. The increased enmity, the need to buy more weapons. And by the way, here's the story that has really gotten away from everybody. There is credible reporting that the Russians are helping the Iranians target missiles against American military bases. And Donald I don't know anything about that. Well, it's your job to know something about that. And if the Russians are doing that, that's an act of war. Now, I'm not calling for a war. I'm not calling for pulling out nuclear weapons, which are defensive weapons. even if Tehran had a nuclear weapon, they're not going to hit Tel Aviv. They'll say lots of rhetoric about it, because what would happen if the Iranians actually dropped a nuke on Israel? Iran would be blown off the face of the earth. There'd be instant, massive retaliation. The reason countries have nuclear weapons is entirely defensive. And the proof of that, if you doubt it, is Ukraine. If they hadn't given up their nuclear weapons in return for the Russian promise to never invade, we wouldn't have that war going on.
Bravo. And just because you mentioned the Russians, and then I'll let up, but because I'm sensitive to the time I'm keeping you. But because you mentioned the Russians, it's been widely reported that Vladimir Putin called Donald Trump and advised him on how to end this war. The notion that these two are talking, of course, this the Strait of Hormuz thing is really good, and just the price of oil going up and the Russian oil stores and the Russian oil production becomes all the more valuable. But just speak to that, the idea somehow that Putin could advise Trump as to how to end this conflict.
Well, Donald, on another scale, is like Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, who said Donald was a kook and a racist and totally unfit to be president. Now, everything Donald does is terrific, and we shouldn't really be questioning what he does. And Donald, in the same way, because his father was just this unmitigated monster. Mark, if you had had him for his father, you wouldn't be who you are. You wouldn't have survived that. You would have either ended up a drunk and dying at the age you're at now, as Donald's older brother did, or you'd end up a monster like Donald, or you'd end up a scared little person who does whatever your bullying older brother does with Robert Trump.
Right.
Putin to Donald is like a father figure. I mean, what president of the United States goes around saying, I don't trust the American intelligence services, but I trust Vladimir Putin and I take him at his word? Who says, I admire the dictator, the hereditary dictator in North Korea, where they punish whole families for multiple generations because one member of the family opposed the family regime. And that's someone who has no idea what he's doing and who's only about himself. And what I'm most troubled by is that there's some fissures going on in the MAGA movement. The war is one. There's some other issues that are creating some fissures, the biggest other one being the Epstein files. But he still has very solid support from 25% or so of the public. The poll I looked at earlier today showed a 32% approval rating, which, low as that is, really 32%, that 1 in 3 Americans. And this is a poll that, does 1,504 people, which mathematically is the magic number and has a good reputation. We have failed badly, not just at teaching American history and the values of our Constitution and simple things like math, which is why fast food joints, have cash registers that has a picture of the hamburger or the milkshake, and then it tells you in dollars and cents how much change to give out. We're failing in a sense of moral obligation to your fellow man. We're failing in a sense of not understanding that it is through cooperation that human beings have made the advances that they have. And we're failing in the sense of not having an ethos. I mean, if our country is an idea, that's been a crucial thought process by the intellectual class from the very beginning of the United States, that our country is an idea. We need to make sure that people understand those ideas. And you don't have to be a college professor to understand those ideas. You can be a janitor and understand those important basic ideas, which are about, as the preamble to our Constitution lays out, ennobling the human spirit to see what human beings who are free and live in an environment of ordered liberty can accomplish. Trump's undoing all of that as fast as he can because he wants absolute power. And we've already seen that it has been absolutely corrupting, as Lord Acton would say.
Yeah, that was well done with the Lord Acton, a manner of the Lord Acton reference. David, so grateful for your time and your takes. It's, I could talk to you for hours because the world demands it. And I think you point to what you last said points to something that is so key, which is that, the American ideals, the thing that sort of is the coherence for all of us. We know of the values, the liberty, the freedom, the civil rights that we're evolving so beautifully, troubled as they are. That's the America that we really want to hold on to and worth fighting for. And sadly, it's just being eroded at an incredible rate.
Seriously, read this book, Born Sick in America. It's not very long, as you can see, and it will teach you so much about what's really at issue with our non-healthcare system, our non-system sick care system that is ridiculously expensive and is only one part of why other countries, people's lives are going longer, ours aren't. They don't have nearly as many maternal deaths, infant deaths, lots of other things. They don't have the levels of disability that we have because there's a whole system you have to look at, not just the medical system.
I will read that book, says Zero Sum. We'll link to that book under this video, Born Sick in the USA. Thank you, Professor. We'll talk next week. David Cay Johnston. So long.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at? Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. Thank you for being here. Lots going on. Want to play a couple of other cuts for you related to things. David Cay Johnston is a treasure. No question about it. Sean McIsaac with a $10.40 super 40, is it 46 cent super chat? 1046. Operation Epstein Barry costs us. There you go. Instead of Epic Fury, it's Epstein Barry. Operation Epstein Barry costs us $10 billion a day. That's the official $1 billion a day figure. The official $1 billion a day figure is about as credible as Cheeto's golf score, meaning the cheating president's golf score, of course. And yeah, well, I read you a little bit earlier the Pentagon burn rate on money. It's insane, and you're right. This war is incredibly expensive, and I'm sure there is absolutely no congruence between the expressed cost and the actual cost. Congruence is a ding word. One oboe with a 49. I don't know. Is that Mexican pesos? What are those?
I think so. Mexican pesos.
Yeah. Gracias.
Big shout out.
Muchísimas gracias, as we say in my country. Thank you for that. Can Congress subpoena that 13-year-old girl to testify? Asked Tony Ladoudy. I think her identity is being concealed. And so for that reason, and maybe others, they might be reluctant to do that. June 18th. How did I get into these comments? All of a sudden, I'm deep in the comments.
And now, your comments.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened, but all right. Franklin Harry Dwight John with a $10 super chat says, June 18th, 2013, Trump tweeted, "Do you think Putin will be going to the Miss Universe pageant in November in Moscow? If so, will he become my new best friend?" Signed, my new best friend, right? Pretty crazy that he's so tight with Vlad. It's the Jim Avila rule, and forever. 30 to 35% of Americans are complete idiots, says Pietro. Yeah, I mean, I thought of that as David was asking.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
That's from the former White House correspondent and the brilliant ABC News correspondent, Jim Avila, rest in peace. Yeah, Pietro, you're so right about that. I mean, it just, all right. Why start a war with no real plan, says Spencer Jaffe. I mean, this is the problem. I'll get to a couple of more cuts here in a second. I've got something from Hegseth, Lindsey Graham, and more from Trump as well. I also want to just touch base on the way out here on what's going on with the oil prices and the economy at large. I'm talking about the world economy at large. I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But first,
it's time to pop a mint.
Let's do it, baby. Oh,
The
yes.
Mark Thompson Show.
So we road tested this product for a month before we brought them on the air with us because we wanted to make sure it really worked. Zellman's is a real system, I'm going to call it, to fight bad breath. And it's beyond just popping something in your mouth that kind of works like, like some minty breath freshener. Zellman's, Zelmins, Zellmans.com. It's a tiny capsule, okay? So it's like the size of like a Tic Tac or something like that?
Yeah, in that range, yeah.
And it's a tiny capsule, and on the outside is the powerful mint. That's the blast. It's really good. It kind of like gives you that fresh breath feel in your mouth. But it's on the inside. You then get to a capsule. After that's done, there'll be capsules. You swallow them. I take 3 at a time. That's why I say there'll be like capsules, because they're, you can take 2 or 3. And when the capsule interacts with stuff in your stomach, there's parsley seed oil inside those capsules, and it neutralizes the odors that come up and cause bad breath. It really does work. That's why I was telling you I road tested it for a month. Courtney and I road tested. Now we take it before bed, and it fights morning breath. Zellmans.com. It's amazing. Mark T is your discount code for 15% off. No artificial sweeteners, no xylitol, no preservatives. Powerful mint on the outside and the parsley seed oil on the inside. Swallow that capsule and watch it work. You road test it yourself. See if it doesn't work for you. Zellmans.com. Fight bad breath with this simple thing, Zellman's Minty Mouth, Zelmins, Zellmans.com. Mark T at checkout for 15% off.
Yay!
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm just drinking my Coach. Believe me, I drink so much coffee that I've got to.
You
I
need
don't
the
worry
Minty
about
Mouth.
breath. Yeah, I worry about breath constantly. I've got coffee breath.
It's a good thing we have some good coffee on this show.
Coachella Valley Coffee, and they're a sponsor on the show. Coachella Valley Coffee is at the tennis match in the desert. They've got this really cool setup. I don't think I sent you any pictures, Tony. They sent a picture. Damn it. I'm going to do it right now. I think there's a picture of Michael Schur, who's down there.
Oh, what?
And he hooked up with them down there, stopped by their... yeah, I'm sending this to you right now.
I bet they gave him a coffee mug.
Tony is so good that you'll have this in seconds.
There it is.
Oh, there
Look
they
at
are.
that.
There they are. Their website, huh?
Yeah.
I mentioned them because they're a small business that has really grown, and they've joined us, and we're also a small business, right? It's you who keep us on the air. We're really here because of Patreon and PayPal donations and an audience that's really dedicated. So their coffee is all, I sent it to you, Tony. It's all organically and ethically sourced from women-owned farms. And the thing about Coachella Valley Coffee is that you'll go there. It is a boutique roastery, so it's not a discount place. They don't sweep up beans off the floor, put them in a bag, and then sell them to you at a discount on the internet. There's a lot of that. There are a lot of discounted beans out there. I am really a coffee guy. I have 3 Burr grinders. I have this huge coffee machine and an espresso machine. I mean, I really kind of know this territory, at least from a taste standpoint. And I've fallen in love with Coachella Valley Coffee. I was drinking them before they became a sponsor, and you will love them too. Coachella Valley Coffee. They have tea as well. There's Michael Schur and Cliff down there in the desert at the tennis match. Coachella Valley Coffee, and Cliff is the roast master general. After the dust settles, we'll have him come on and say hello.
Cool.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Do use our discount code for coffee, tea, spices, anything you get on their site. Mark T gets you 10% off Coachella Valley Coffee. Mark T, 10% off CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I think if you weren't a coffee snob before you tried Coachella Valley Coffee, you will be one once you try it, right? Yeah.
Well said. Well said. I love it. All right. I've got much to do and not a lot of time to do it, so let's get on it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for being here, everybody. I also have one last mention of a sponsor, and I'll do it in just a couple of minutes because I spent the night in a way with this sponsor. Much is being talked about in terms of the Strait of Hormuz and the realities there. Tony, I sent you a bit of a clip from an oil analyst talking about this entire thing, and you kind of hear the dispassionate way they talk about things, not the emotional way they talk about things. But at the same time, you get the very real scenarios and narratives that can lead to a pretty dark place. Go ahead.
Right. So do you have a better idea than we have how long this lasts and ultimately what the peak in oil is? And will we be at 85 in 2 weeks?
Well, it depends on what happens on the ground or really in the water. I guess that has to do with questions outside of what we cover directly, but let's ask, are we getting more assets moved to the region? Is either side planning to say, all right, we give up? It doesn't look like it right now that the latter is true, and the former looks like it might be true. So maybe we're going on longer. At some point, you have to ask, what are we going to get on the U.S. side, right? Markets price scarcity, democracies reward popularity, and scarcity isn't popular. So something's got to give. And also, there's a question of what it would mean to escort ships through the strait past anti-ship missiles. How much do we have in the way of interceptors? What does that look like in the end? If this goes on weeks, then I think we start to get to the point where supply balances demand on price. And until supply shows back up, price is going to destroy demand.
So we know Iraq, for example, oil production, a third of the normal rate. What does all this mean for our friends in Russia and China?
Well, it means that Russia's barrels, which previously were discounted because they were sanctions distressed, are now able to command much more of a premium than they would previously. It means that China, which was already buying barrels closer to full market price from some of its previous providers as the buyer of last resort for those providers, is going to have to pay more. But it also means that China, in 2022, Joe, we had a situation where former President Biden asked China to draw down their strategic reserves, and they didn't. This time around, they have an incentive maybe to do so.
So there you hear the other unintended consequences of this, the Russia situation in which Russia benefits enormously from what the Americans are doing, right? Their discounted oil because of the sanctions now becomes incredibly valuable. There are other assets, to use his terminology, being sent to the region. You've seen that the French are sending a lot of naval assets there to the region. There is this is something I was talking about a little bit yesterday, there's absolutely a collective interest on the part of the world to get assets to the region, if necessary, to force the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the problem becomes with the mining of that area, and I get it, you have anti-mine ships, et cetera, but there's a danger and there's an inaccuracy that could be deadly associated with all of this. So this is something that is far more easily said than done, forcing the opening of the strait. Cut 4, Tony, from Trump talking about the strait and understanding the importance of it, but perhaps not understanding the situation he finds himself in. This is the question being asked.
About the strait, you mean? Yeah, well, I want to keep it open. I want to keep it good. You know, it doesn't pertain to us so much as it does to China. We're really helping China here and other countries because they get a lot of their energy from the straits. But, hey, look, we have a good relationship with China. It's my honor to do it. Yeah.
So the thing I think that reflects is naivete, right? I mean, he's freelancing. He's riffing there, right? He's sort of just, I could open it. Of course, we want to open it, but by opening it, we're really helping China. He's referencing the fact that they get so much of their oil through the strait. But really, the naivete comes in that it's all related. The idea somehow that you just see the Chinese part is laughable. All of these oil markets are related. That's why the oil market right now is putting at a premium a barrel of oil. So the thing that the analyst suggested, which was somehow that supply was going to diminish, and so the pricing was going to adjust was really a reference to the fact that Americans, and you mentioned democracy doesn't, I think that was a reference, again, through his sort of marketese, the way he spoke, it was a reference to the fact that there will be continued pressure on the oil supply being renewed in some way if this goes on for any length of time. And on the length of time it lasts, cut 17. Pete Hegseth sort of doing what Hegseth does, which is smack talk in that frat boy way and just declares, yeah, we'll wrap things up when we want to wrap it up.
No hesitation, no half measures. As President Trump declared yesterday, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on our timeline and at our choosing. For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet. Just the bifurcation, just the trend lines that we talked about on our first briefing.
So I think what you're getting from Hegseth is, as I said, the typical puffery. It's utter BS. Don't tell me about how great your intelligence is when you just blew up an elementary school on day one. But this is the, I don't know, this is the Kool-Aid that's out there. I just feel as though you have utter incompetence all the way to the top. And in Hegseth, you see it, you see it with a kind of muscularity, literally, that is embarrassing. Here's a little Lindsey Graham, who's never met a war he doesn't like.
So we have a commander-in-chief in President Trump, who I think is Ronald Reagan plus. He's told the Iranians, you mess with the Strait of Hormuz, I'm going to destroy you beyond recognition. So tonight, I hope the American people understand that President Trump is doing what he had to do. You could not ignore this information and be a protector of America. The evidence was beyond clear. They do not want a nuclear power program. They want a bomb. And the only way they won't get a bomb is for somebody to stop them. And that somebody is Bibi and Trump. God bless you both.
Yeah. So you know, there is no cheerleader like Lindsey Graham on this kind of thing, without regard to facts on the ground. And no, again, Donald Trump talks about the fact that the nuclear sites have been taken out. Here's cut 10, and he speaks about the fact that, you know, and we talked about the fact prior, 6 months ago, he'd said that the nuclear program had been obliterated. So this is the last thing I want to play from Trump on this, because it's so clearly in no way reflecting any reality. These are not fact-based comments, but it's part of the propaganda. Go ahead.
Even after we obliterated their key nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, they never negotiated in good faith. They still continued to say, we want to build nuclear. We want enrichment at levels that were unacceptable. And they even turned down an offer for unlimited free nuclear fuel forever for civilian purposes. We had people offering them free nuclear fuel. They weren't interested in that because they wanted to build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, so that's the, that's the expressed desire. I don't blame any nation for wanting to build a nuclear weapon now. I mean, it seems to be the one defense against aggression from others, right? But that said, this is a mess, and it's affecting the world markets, and it affects domestic policy. Trump himself lost in this, and his popularity continues to flag. Again, I mentioned his sons will profit off of all of this. His eldest sons, Don Jr. and Eric, are investing in a new drone manufacturer called Powerus. It is going to fill some of the U.S. demand following this ban on foreign-made drones here in the U.S. They declared the ban, the Trump administration did, late last year. And Power Us, which is based near Mar-a-Lago in Florida, will reportedly go public by a way of reverse merger with a publicly traded holding company controlled by the Trumps in order to help raise capital to scale their manufacturing, which is happening immediately. I mentioned it. It's just basically a company that's been hatched overnight to produce drones, and the Trumps own it. I happen to believe drones will be a much better investment than companies that still print newspapers, Eric Trump said when he was called out on this deal by the Wall Street Journal. So, as Trump's approval rating sinks, fears about the midterm continues. Trump is more popular than Kamala Harris, according to the latest survey. Only 34% of what's that?
It's like we've learned nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's instructive, though, because I always say, you know, it's all who the other candidate is. It's not just.
I mean, the guy could put in tariffs, take out Venezuela's leader, blast Iran, and still we're worried about Kamala Harris's giggle and her pantsuit. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird that, no, it is frustrating. And it's weird that there's a visceral reaction to candidates on an emotional reaction to candidates on one level or another. And that kind of carries the day, you know. GOP Representative Kevin Kiley will be leaving the party. He's going to become an independent. He said he's leaving the Republican Party, made the comment yesterday. Today, I'm asking the clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives to have that reflected in the official roster, the fact that I am an independent. Kiley's decision, as noted here, is entirely about his political survival versus a rejection of the GOP that we've seen. He's running in California in the newly redrawn 6th congressional district, which leans Democratic. And he's running in this district instead of his current 3rd district because he thinks he's got a better shot winning there. Both districts redrawn as part of the state's Prop 50. You remember we talked a lot about that. And Marco Rubio's stock is rising. He's being spoken of in bigger and bigger ways, even in polling about the 2028 election. Little Marco may face off against J.D. Vance if we last that long. And Marco's being talked about in relation to Cuba. Cut 12, please, Tony. Trump talking about Marco Rubio.
Cuba, you said that Cuba wants to make a deal.
Yes.
What would the United States get in return for that, and why should Americans trust Marco Rubio to negotiate it?
Well, Marco Rubio is doing a great job. I think he's going to go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history. Look at what we've done as a presidency. Look at what we've done as an administration. They trust Marco. And so do the American people trust. He's been successful no matter where he's been. He also speaks the language, which is always nice and always helpful. But he's dealing, and it may be a friendly takeover. It may not be a friendly takeover. It wouldn't matter because they're down to, as they say, fumes. They have no energy. They have no money. They're in deep trouble on a humanitarian basis. And we don't want to see that, but they were very, very bad to a lot of people, as you know, and a lot of people living the Cuban-American vote, which I got at record levels. Very important. Those people are very important to me. I know what they went through. They went through hell. Some of them have gone on to be some of the most successful people in the country. Cuban-American business people, some of them are like the most successful in the country. And a lot of them are friends of mine because I've been fighting this battle with them for a long time. The Castro regime was brutal, but they lived off Venezuela. Now they don't live off Venezuela. Sends them no energy, no fuel, no oil, no money, no nothing. they lived without Venezuela, they couldn't have made it, and we cut them off from everything else. So, yeah, they're going to make either a deal or we'll do it just as easy anyway. Yeah.
So that's the story on Marco Rubio and Cuba, and he's not wrong about the fact that Cuba is being starved out. But I'm sure the Cuban Americans to whom he is referring, they are members of the Mar-a-Lago Club. I think that's how when he says, I've been fighting for them, I'm thinking, really? All right. Has anyone explained to this idiot that Cuba is a communist government, says Beth. Yeah. I don't know what the plans are for Cuba, but apparently he does have plans to, I mean, underpinning Donald Trump, we have to wrap up here, but just underpinning Donald Trump's worldview is just domination of this hemisphere and apparently beyond. So he wants to leave his mark everywhere. He wants to leave his mark all over Washington. He's put his name on everything he possibly can. He's put his face on everything he possibly can. There are banners all over D.C. with his face. I mean, they've been mandated to put up these banners. And so I think this is all of a sort, a flex that is very Trumpian. And Cuba would be in that category of Venezuela, much easier perhaps to make the changes that he wants, but I'm sure it will have the same lack of planning that's associated with Iran. I mean, I would caution him one mess at a time, and this one you're not going to be able to wipe off of your shoes as quickly as you did Venezuela. This is bad. Iran is a huge country, and they are seeing the real threat to not only their regime, but their way of life. And all the support you had from the Iranian people who hated this awful regime, this repressive, crazy, radical regime. Iran, you hear about the mullahs and everything, but they're largely a secular society. They don't buy into all the radical religious stuff. The street doesn't. And so now that street that celebrated the taking out of the top leader, you are losing a lot of them, or have lost a lot of them, when you're raining oil down on neighborhood after neighborhood in Tehran. I mean, this is a mess. And now you say you want to go in and get the nuclear material with a small force? They're talking about a small force. You can't get the nuclear material in Iran out with a small force. I've made the point repeatedly because it's important to make it. Because they say small force, and then you'll need air cover. You'll need a large force to support the small force. Why? Because you don't think the Iranians view that as the holy grail? They know you want the nuclear stuff. It will be very heavily defended. That will be potentially a bloodbath. And so when you talk about the future in Iran and your future military adventurism and the goals, I think you very much have to take stock of that. All right. Want to get to some comments, and then I have
The Mark Thompson Show.
You know what I did last night? I have to tell you this quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I dove in, or as I dived in, I don't know what it is, to the Sweet 106 Bakery order.
Oh,
and
I'm
I am
so
telling
jealous.
you, Sweet 106 Bakery, this stuff is incredible. I've never done crack cocaine, but this is the crack cocaine of cupcakes. Yeah, it's crazy. Christy won Cupcake Wars twice. And Sweet 106 Bakery put all of that into these wonderful products. It comes in a container like that. That's what I was eating from last night. Then I put it in the fridge. Then I pull it back out of the fridge like 4 minutes later. Then I pull it back out put it back in, pull it back out 4 minutes later, etc. 4 minutes in, out. Layered cupcakes. You will love this. If you try this and you don't fall in love with this, you have to really question everything about your existence. Layered cupcakes are the thing. Knock around on their site. Try their newest. There's the Snickers, which is just insanely good. Sweet 106
delicious.
Bakery. Yeah. Again, if you're just listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio, it is SUITE. It's like a suite of rooms, suite106bakery.com. Use our discount code, 15% off. Now, here's the deal. Last thing I want to tell you. They cook to order, so they cook small batches. So it's not like pre-made and then they just send it out. No, it's cooked in their kitchen as you get the order in. And so depending on what day of the week, et cetera, it's a small business. They will get it out to you as a fresh container. So do check and see. Don't expect it to come like the next day. It's not an Amazon type operation. It's really delicious and it's made for you. Suite106bakery.com. Discount code is MarkT and you'll get 15% off. Do it. You'll love me for this recommendation. Am I right, Kim? I mean,
oh yes.
Yeah.
It truly is. It is the best. Sometimes you're at a restaurant and maybe you order the dessert and it comes to the table and it looks really good, but it doesn't necessarily taste as good as it looks. You ever had that? You have high hopes for a dessert. This is not the exact opposite, because it looks good and it tastes good. Like, this is one of the best things I've ever had. So you've got to try it.
Yeah, it is pretty damn
Kim,
good.
how are you?
Really, really good. Suite106bakery.com. Mark T at checkout for 15% off. I do need
And now, your comments.
All right, we can do them quickly. I will take whatever comments are available. Kim, turn to you.
One, I had this up on the screen a bit earlier while you were talking. Sweet Sassy Molassie asks, why was Erica Kirk appointed to the Air Force Academy Board by Trump? I saw the story last night, and I also thought, as someone else in the chat said, that it was a kind of an Onion satire story, because what does she have experience-wise that would qualify her to sit on a military academy board? I don't know. But it's a true story. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think
not
it's
that
all
she's
right.
not a nice person, but I mean, I wouldn't be qualified for this. What don't you want people that have served or that have some experience?
Well, I mean, just to be clear, it's 16 members on the board of visitors responsible for making recommendations to the defense secretary for changes at the Air Force Academy. So they provide an annual report on morale, on financial state, on academics. So they look at the academy. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Wayne Mullen is on that board. Tommy Tuberville is on that board. Kevin Kramer, who's from North Dakota. Ted Budd. These are all Republicans, as you might imagine. And John Hickenlooper, who is a Democrat from Colorado, is on the board as well. And when asked why Erica Kirk had been named to the board, the White House didn't speak to any specifics except to say that President Trump has made the perfect choice in appointing her. So there you have it. It is what it is, which is very much, yeah, that's how you end up with the people we end up with. How did Vince McMahon's ex-wife end up as the person running the Department of Education when she didn't even know what AI was? She thought it was A1. The steak sauce.
I mean, if you're going to put her on a board, wouldn't it make more sense to put her on don't we have like a Christian, Save the Christians from Being Persecuted board? That
We
Dr.
do,
Phil's
actually.
in charge of? Yeah.
There's a religious freedom board. It's very much,
yeah.
You're right.
I mean,
Save
would
the
she be better
Christians from being
on
persecuted
that one,
board, yeah.
and just more fitting? I don't know.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is from Murphy with the deep dive on Erica Kirk. Erica Kirk also got married late, spends no time with her children, but grifts, giving speeches about marrying early and being a traditional wife at home with your children and not working. Wow, I didn't know that. You know a lot more about Erica Kirk than I do. Thank you, Murphy, for that. And what else?
And now, your comments.
Well, okay, we're trying to get through them. What was there anything else? I feel proud and ashamed while listening to this conversation. Proud because I understand, but ashamed because I don't comprehend everything. Greetings from a Dutch-speaking Belgian.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Nikon.
Nikonic. Nicotoro?
Tony Cotoro? Nikon Icotoro? I don't know.
Let me see. Nikon Nicotoro. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm very intrigued by your name and by your exotic. You come from an exotic land, and I love that. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Please come again, and we have more bad news for you here all the time. So please come from your faraway world, yes, and join us here. It's so beautiful. Yes. All right, I have a pitcher of Coachella Valley coffee cold brew on the counter right now. I love that. Getting ready for hot weather, says Ms. Organic. Bravo. Yeah, they've got great cold brew at Coachella Valley Coffee. Good stuff. Anything else? If not, I will hit the road.
It's time.
I love Shazam, says Donna. I knew she was holding out on me. I said, anything else? I'm looking at there's a number of comments here, and Kim doesn't put them up. That was the only one, I guess. That relates back to the beginning of the show. I love Shazam. Right. So if you missed that, I encourage you to check it out. All right, the major announcement I'll have to bump till Thursday, but I'll do it Thursday. Tomorrow you'll have Mo Kelly. I got to go to the doctor tomorrow. Yeah, a whole bunch of sucky stuff happening this month with the doctor. But Tony and I are dueling for the worst doctor appointments. Yeah. But Mo will be here tomorrow, so please, and so will John Rothman. So please show up and show some support. I will have the announcement for you on Thursday, and we have a special guest at the end of the week as well. I have another. Just looking, I don't have my guest list in front of me, but all right, we'll. I'll have it for this is what I'm going to the doctor to talk about. I can't remember the guests. So, all right, yeah.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all your support and the love.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. Thank you. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.